The NSX Type S does not have any trouble changing direction quickly. Hey crew, I've got the key to that Acura NSX Type S. We are going to take it for a drive, but first, let's check out how it looks on the inside and outside. This hotter Type S model will be a send-off for the NSX as we know it, and Acura is limiting production to just 350 units globally, all of which have already been sold. You'll know the Type S based on this revised fascia with exposed carbon fiber and improved cooling for the heat exchangers. Above those, we find projector LED headlights with LED DRLs and turn signals. There are these big ducts in the hood. This Indy Yellow Pearl paint job has metallic flake that glistens in the sunlight. At the side, we find the set of dark gray painted 19-inch front, 20-inch rear wheels, wrapped in Pirelli P0 tires, 245 section front, and 305 at the rear. Within those wheels are standard carbon ceramic brakes with gray painted calipers. There's a bit of extra carbon fiber for this bottom sill and a standard carbon fiber roof on the Type S. Black gloss covers the mirror caps and door handles. You get functional vents behind the front wheel arches and to the rear mounted intercoolers. Stepping back to look at the profile, the NSX Type S silhouette. It's striking, it's piercing, it's angular, it's all the sharp words. And there's a Type S badge there, kind of winking at you, letting you know what's up. At the back, we find LED taillights and turn signals. Above those, the Type S gets a carbon fiber lip spoiler. And then down low, it gets an NSX GT3 derived diffuser. It's probably the coolest part of the car to me, with 4 center exit exhaust ports. The NSX Type S just sits right to me, with that sparkling yellow and the carbon fiber kind of elevating its authority as a supercar. But I want to know, what do you think is the best looking version of the NSX? Let me know in the comments, and let's check out the interior. Opening up by pressing here on the door handle and then pulling, and looking inside at this two-tone interior with a suede wrapped headliner, leather and suede seats. NSX is stitched on the headrests. They're power adjusting with lumbar and heating. NSX floor mats are there. Aluminum accented foot pedals. Here's some suede, aluminum, and leather on the dashboard. Looking at the doors, there's more leather with suede and leather all the way down the door panel. You get 2 one-touch windows, power adjusting, not power folding door mirrors. 2-position memory for the front seats. Your fuel release door and hatch button are here. And raising that hatch reveals a Type S specific carbon fiber engine surround and a number plate. You can see this is not counted as one of the 350 units being produced. It's just a marketing vehicle. What you can see of the engine isn't a lot, but the intakes and red are pretty cool. Here we find 4 cubic feet of space. There's no front trunk to complement that. You can fit a set of golf clubs inside or most of my body, and there isn't a handle to close the lid, so just do it as gently as possible. Sliding in, which is remarkably easy to do for a supercar. Closing up the door gives you that nice solid seal. Looking at the wheel, leather wrapped with this carbon fiber arm down here and for this almost squared off portion up top. But what I'm most excited about the wheel are these grips at the back of it, because your fingers just slot in so nicely back here, giving this feel of authority. The paddles are either aluminum or plastic, not sure, but they've got decent action to them. There's a digital gauge, carbon fiber housing up here, suede, leather, and this ornate design around the passenger side with Type S badge there on the suede wrapped glove box, which I opened to show you. These removable drink holders, which slot in on the passenger side like the Mazda Miata. And I'm glad we have them because otherwise storage space is very limited. If you lift the lid, you'll find a small tray with a USB-A port, and there's another USB-A port in the glove box. Infotainment is old school. It's running the old Honda software, so it's a touchscreen, but its responsiveness and the graphics are pretty bad. There's also no volume knob, but you do get wired Apple CarPlay. Beneath the screen are physical climate inputs, a drive mode selector knob, and then gear selection here is these keys. Those are wrapped around in suede with leather here on the console. Headroom is good for me at 6 feet tall. Head clears the roof, probably with enough space for me to put on a helmet for track duty. So that gets the thumbs up. And then visibility out of the cabin for a supercar is really solid. And I know that little window there seems dinky, but it really does help because you don't have blind spot monitoring or rear cross traffic. This cabin isn't aggressively sporty or spacious, but it has the sport where it counts, like this wheel, and it gets me ready for the drive. So let's go take it. All right, let's fire it up. So the Type S starts in the sport drive mode. It does not start in the quiet drive mode, despite the fact that I left this vehicle in quiet the last time I drove it. So that means that we hear that gas engine, at least for a short period of time. The vehicle's still on, now it's silent. But it starts that gas engine, potentially rouses your neighborhood if it's early in the morning or late at night, and that means that this conventional hybrid is different than plug-in hybrid supercars like the Ferrari 296 GTB or McLaren Artura that can start as EVs, and so you may never even rustle feathers in your neighborhood on your way out. But now it's an EV, and now we can click over to the left and go into the quiet drive mode to start things off here. Then I pull back on this tab to go into reverse. That brings up a low resolution camera system. Am I surprised on this infotainment? No. But we do have 3 different angles to choose from and trajectory lines as we back up. And that typical hybrid hum for pedestrian safety. Hitting the D to go into drive. We'll kick things off with a turning radius test. As we do, crank the wheel. And the turning radius in the NSX Type S is pretty wide. And furthermore, because you don't have a front-facing camera system, you have to be extra careful not to scrape anything on that protruding snout. Listening now for the turn signal sound. Bit of a sharp tap. Not my favorite turn signal noise. What about the world-famous horn test? Eee. That is also sharp and not pleasant. Is a horn ever really pleasant, though? Now you hear the gas engine come on there, and that's because I gave just a little bit too much throttle, despite the fact that we still have some charge in the battery. But if I pull off and let it go back to EV mode, and then stay very light on the throttle, we can drive at low speeds as a pure EV. This vehicle doesn't have a dedicated EV range like those plug-in hybrid supercars I mentioned earlier, but you can make your way in and out of your neighborhood silently after the startup. But let's give it a bit more throttle. The twin-turbo V6 comes on. Not in a disruptive way, though. It's a very quiet start to that, and it doesn't jitter the chassis or anything like that. And let's fully lay out that powertrain here. Like the standard NSX, the Type S is using 2 electric motors at the front axle and 1 sandwiched in between the twin-turbocharged 3.5-liter V6 and the 9-speed dual-clutch automatic gearbox. It's sending power to all 4 tires, but the amount of power in the Type S is up compared to the standard NSX. Thanks to the use of the 2 turbochargers out of the NSX GT3 Evo race car, injecting more fuel into the cylinders and deriving more energy from the battery system, power is up 27 horses and torque is up 16 pound-feet compared to the regular NSX for totals of 600 horsepower and 492 pound-feet of torque. It's the way that power is delivered around town, daily driving, that helps make the NSX, even this Type S, such a daily drivable supercar. You might as well be driving a 200 horsepower hybrid because That's the way it works. In the quiet and sport modes, the throttle response is gentle, but the power is there to get you up to speed. The gas engine kicks on and turns off seamlessly in the background. And despite the fact that Acura has retuned the adaptive dampers in the Type S to be a little firmer, the ride is still highly compliant. It's a bit bouncier than the last NSX I drove over certain bumps, but the dampening there softens harsh impacts that most other supercars happily transfer to your body and kind of make it uncomfortable to drive. This is very much not that. And the seats are very supportive. The bolsters on the side, which are not adjustable, do come in a little tight on my body, and I'm not a very wide person. So I wonder how many body types will fit well into these seats, but for me, they're still very comfortable. This dual clutch also deserves some praise for its smoothness. It behaves very similar to a torque converter automatic in terms of the way that it gets between gears. Typical dual clutch is a clunkiness, especially at low speeds, moving between the gears. This one, it just blends. That, in addition to the fact that at speed, the NVH level is quite low. You hear some churning with constant throttle of that V6. A little bit of tire noise, but the wind noise is down. And comparing this to something like a Huracan, where that V10 doesn't ever really get quiet, the NSX Type S is totally amenable to you just having a casual conversation with a passenger, or commuting in a relaxed way. You know what it is with this car? It feels so approachable. Like most other supercars, you have this little bit of tension in you as you go out to drive them, because they drive in a way that demands your full attention and full respect. Not saying you shouldn't respect the Type S, but you can drive it in the same casual manner you would, as I said, a 200 horsepower hybrid, maybe sedan thing. It's just that easy. Another thing, the NSX Type S uses a brake-by-wire system. And usually even just saying those words makes me stress a little bit, because I don't know how the brake pedal is going to feel and how the braking is going to respond as I get on it. But in the Type S, it's very natural. I'm not going to say it's as natural as a physical connection between the brake pedal and the actual braking. But when you apply a certain amount of force, you get a predictable result. So am I calling the Type S boring? Really? I mean, the interior, yeah, the around town stuff, for better or worse, yeah. But let's change the scenery. Let's change the drive mode and see if those things don't spark some emotion from this car. And we'll begin this revitalization, as I think we must, with a real-world 0 to 60 test. So the race box is set up here. I then turn the dial, not just once to take us to Sport Plus, but crank and hold it to take us to the track drive mode. I wish that changed the gauge cluster more than just making the colors red. But it does also defeat the stability control. I then, to use launch, hold my foot on the brake, pin the throttle, build up the revs, says launch mode is ready. Let go. Whoa! And we got to 60 in 3.3 seconds. The Type S also gets a retuned torque vectoring system that will more readily shuttle the torque around the all-wheel drive system where it needs to go, so you could really slingshot out of corners. The steering, well, first, I gotta say again, I love these grips on the back of the wheel. And the steering is quick and accurate. But it doesn't have a ton of feel. The resistance builds up in the corner doesn't provide the same level of communication that I get from some other supercars. So I'm a touch more hesitant to carry speed through corners, not knowing where the limits of grip are. The NSX Type S does not have any trouble changing direction quickly. And the carbon ceramic brakes, like I experienced around town, they're easy to modulate. They've got good bite. I actually think the tires are the limiting factor here. I can hear them all the time screaming in anguish. They seem to be overwhelmed. It's not a light vehicle, so I get it. But it drives pretty light. It drives in a way that can be uniquely manipulated. So take, for example, typically with all-wheel drive vehicles, there's a tendency for understeer that you only really cure by trail braking to slowly pull the rear end around. But in the Type S, your better bet is braking early, chucking in, and then pouring on the power to let the front electric motors bite in, and then letting the rear powertrain push that back end around the corner. Which is not the way a driving instructor would tell you how to do it, but it's how you drive this car. And then it becomes very good indeed. The last thing left to explore is manual mode. And the way you get there and lock it in manual mode is by hitting the drive button once more. And then we're pulling on these plasticky feeling paddles that do have good travel and nice action. Letting it run out all the way to red line. And then experiencing quick shifts. Those tires, man. They sound like they're being tortured. Graciously, above the sound of those tires is a pleasant V6 note. And just go ahead and upshift us here and then slowly work in the power. You can clearly define some turbocharger characteristics. There, the compressor noise sucking in that air, and then the whoosh of blow off. Even some flutter. I love it. And with that, I have, at the very least, convinced myself that the NSX Type S is not boring, provided the right environment and in the right drive mode. It is, however, always hospitable, and that is going to be my MilesPerHr word of the day. Hospitable meaning friendly or welcoming to guests. I feel like a guest in this vehicle, not in the stranger sense, but in the way that I'm taken care of, whether it's around town, how comfortable it is and quiet it is, or even on a fun canyon road, the way that performance is approachable. It's just always hospitable. And now, as we turn our attention to pricing and competition, let's first discuss top speed and fuel economy. Fuel economy for this car is good. It's 21 MPG in the city, 22 on the highway, and 21 combined. The top speed is 191 miles per hour. The starting figure for the Type S is about $171,500 in this vehicle, as tested with that lightweight package and the Berlina Black wheels and this ELS Studio Sound system and the Indy Yellow Pearl paint, is 186,000 buckaroos. Now, in this price territory that the NSX Type S finds itself, there isn't really a direct hybridized rival. You do have the McLaren Artura, but that's quite a bit more money, and I will get to that in a second. Otherwise, you might think of spending your money on something more just strictly internal combustion. Things like the Porsche 911 GT3 that starts at about $171,000, makes 503 horsepower, gets to 60 in 3.2 seconds, has a top speed of 198 and fuel economy of 16 combined. Or there's the Audi R8 Performance Quattro that starts around $203,000, makes 602 horsepower, gets to 60 in 3.2 seconds, has a top speed of 204 miles per hour and fuel economy of 15 combined. If you did have more money to spend and you're really hooked on the hybrid thing, there's the McLaren Artura, a plug-in hybrid supercar that starts at $237,500. It makes 671 horsepower, gets to 60 in 3.0 seconds, has a top speed of 205 miles per hour and an MPGe rating, or equivalent rating, of 39, with an all-electric range, unlike the NSX Type S, of 11 miles. Of those, the R8 Quattro, beyond its fantastic V10 noise, doesn't really wow me in the way that would have me saying, yeah, I'm going to spend $200,000 on that thing. So I'll rule that one out. The 911 GT3 and the McLaren Artura are more visceral, engaging driving experiences than this NSX Type S, and that makes them a little more attractive than this car. I don't really have many notes for the Type S, things I would fix. I think maybe more steering feel and an interior that doesn't feel like it came out of a 2015 Acura TL. But beyond those things, it's actually more of an idealistic concern that I have with this car. I feel like a supercar shouldn't be that friendly to you. It should be able to not punish you in certain circumstances, but I think it should feel like more of a sense of occasion to drive, whereas the NSX Type S, if you're driving around town or really any environment that isn't on a serious canyon road or at the track, it's just too livable. It's weird to say. And so while the Type S does take a supercar that I never really fully accepted or appreciated and turns it into something that visually, on the outside, with the carbon fiber, the GT3 derived diffuser, looks special, and then from a driving experience perspective, in the right environment, dials up the needle enough to make it truly exciting, it's still not the one I would choose. I would either save my pennies and get the flat six sonorous GT3 with the manual transmission, or I'd save my pennies to then spend them on the Artura with its incredible chassis, its versatile powertrain, and its more traditional supercar good looks. Which would you guys choose? Would you go NSX Type S? Would you go 911 GT3, Audi R8 Performance Quattro, or McLaren Artura? Let me know in the comments. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and share it. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell to get notified. And I will see you again next time.